Hi and welcome. This is Angela, and today I'm looking at a very simple technique to share with you. And looking at the future of humanity, what are we going through right now in terms of this current events and the situation that we see and find ourselves in, things like climate disasters or cultural shift, war, other things that are going on. What might be the bigger picture that I've experienced from dancing? And I've put in the description, when I dance, I know things, which was inspired by my watching Game of Thrones character Tyrion Lannister, when he says, when I drink, I know things, and all this stuff comes out of his mouth. So for me with the dance, when I dance, I dropped into deep knowing. You can't rationalize it, you can't explain it, you can't logic that knowing. So I wanted to share my experience with some of the dance and one simple movement technique today, and how it ties us back to some ancient knowings of humanity. And what might be the purpose of going through a lot of crisis and change right now, and the benefit of tapping into those ancient wisdom about the body, about the gift of movement, and through the movement, about the experience and wisdom of the body itself, how it connects us to the earth below us, that gives us life, but also that we live on. So one of the best things about the body is that it's got a lot of curves and spheres in the body. And often when I was moving, I'm sitting on the trampoline today because it's going to be a softer surface for me to use. But often when we work in dance, we use the spherical shapes of the body. We use the sphere of the head and the sphere of the pelvis. We have the curve of the ribs as well. We have a lot of curves in the body. And the two big ones are the sphere of the pelvis and the sphere of the head. So most often you might hear about those spheres through work such as craniosacral techniques, where they're working on balancing the curve of the cranium with the curve of the sacrum. How I discovered it first was through movement. So a lot of the movement forms, you might do a forward fold in yoga, or you might be moving the head through space in a circular way and finding how the head counterpoints the pelvis. So all ancient shamanic practices of movement would use that sphere of the head and the sphere of the pelvis as two beautiful representations of the spheres of the earth, the planet Earth that we connect to. You could look up at the other spheres in our solar system as well. And the head and its spherical shape, you can often see works of art with the skull itself. So that spherical shape is used in shamanic practices in different indigenous cultures throughout the years, thousands of years, as a very strong symbol of the shapes of round shapes, of spherical shapes that nurture and give life. The earth itself is spherical. Ancient cultures knew that. If you look at their solstice practices and their astrological and astronomical mapping of the skies, they understood the spherical nature, the spheres of the worlds that gave life to us. They also wrote about life that came from other spheres. And so spherical forms, the sphere of Earth itself, is mapped in the shape of the spheres of our body. So one of the classic movements of shamanic dance is represented by, I've forgotten the name of the shamanic dancer, but it's all over New Mexico, which is where I actually started started the Sufi movement with Adnan Sarhan, but it's that classic symbol of the dancer that's folded over from the spine. So the head is folded over from the sphere of the pelvis. And it's that arc of the spine where the head is making a movement and moving away from the base of the spine. And it's the arc of the spine which connects to our ancestors. So in the vertebra of the spine, each vertebra is a connection to our ancestral memory. And even you can go deeper in shamanic work through connecting to the spine. You can connect to animal wisdom. You can connect to different species wisdom. You can connect to the evolution of the species from any vertebra. Any vertebrate species has a connection to a vertebral column. So always that connection of the head to the pelvis through that curve of the spine. It's a very ancient technique which is used throughout all movement forms such as yoga, dance, Mid-Eastern dances. All folkloric dances use some sort of movement where we're arching and curving the spine and feeling that weight of the head curving over down to the earth and lifting up and away from the earth. So you can just try that as a simple strategy sometimes to really start to connect to how do we integrate our higher consciousness, which some of us have believed it's through the brain, the prefrontal cortex, integrating the different parts of the brain. So that visionary part of the brain that downloads things through the third eye, or that in contemplation you can begin to see things from a larger picture. So our cranium, our brain, has this capacity to see and to feel and to go beyond our physical body. How do we integrate that higher consciousness with the feeling of our physical body? And this to me is the most important work moving forward. It's the work I teach in all my movement classes. The belly dance integrates that by using a lot of movements that integrate upper body, moving through that center channel into the lower body and the hips and the feet. So always in dance, you're working from that center core that integrates the upper movements through the center channel down to the feet and in reverse. For our species, if we can master this, our species has been haunted in a way by the animal nature of our species and how that was not integrated in many of our cultures. Shamanic cultures were able to integrate that. They understood the nature of our species being a higher consciousness than other animals, but able to work with other species to integrate that consciousness. So you could go into the fish energy, or you could go into a reptilian energy, or you could go into a mammal or a dog or a wolf or a bear and connect to that energy and then integrate that with the spirit realms and other dimensions. Our modern culture has become disassociated from that wisdom. And now we have this opportunity moving forward to reintegrate. We can use artificial intelligence to do it. We can use our bodies to do it. We can use anything to do it as long as we have that vested interest to integrate that capacity of higher consciousness with the feeling nature of our being and not fall prey to the primal aspect of our nature, which can be over-sexualized, it can be addictive, it can be stuck in negative processes or habits. It can be apathetic and lazy. It can be looking at the nature of humanity through social media and feeling overwhelmed and then choosing just to distract yourself through shopping or through whatever. I mean, there's so many ways to distract ourselves in our culture. at this time. So that enormous distraction in our culture is an incredible opportunity to start to integrate your feeling nature, because our feelings as a human are starving for attention. Our body is a sacred gift. And when we start to connect to the feeling in our bodies, it doesn't have to be that deep either. It can be just about simple self-connection exercises, which I do all the time and which have been the foundation of my integrating of my feelings, which were overwhelming. And I just started listening to that, and they started to naturally come into balance. So the simplicity of the work I do was quite shocking for me, because like Tyrion Lannister with the wine, when I dance, every sort of thing, problem, blah, blah, blah of my brain, or rabbit hole of addiction or whatever would just disappear. It was that quick, it was that simple. And for some people, it was too simple. It was too obvious. For me, it was actually the simple path forward. And now in the work that I share, it's really about, what is it for you? It may not be dance for you. It may be another form of feeling, of connecting to self. A lot of people do it in nature, or play guitar, or listen to the wind passing in the trees. So there's no one way to do this, but the integration for our species now of our feeling nature with the higher consciousness, which is our consciousness of understanding that we're not here just to get our rocks off. We're here actually to become a responsible species for all life on the planet, including ours, which doesn't mean it's a heavy task. It can be wonderfully joyful, but it does mean that things that are addictive, that destroy the planet, are no longer able to be accepted by the planet, because there's too many of us human beings on Earth to make that sustainable. So we're at that tipping point where we've actually got to change our consciousness and look at how to have fun with this planet, but not use it or abuse it, which goes for our bodies. We can have fun and joy with our bodies without abusing and using the body. And that means the nature of work will change, the nature of play will change, the way we look at life, living and dying will change, the way we look at health and the body will change. So that's where we're at. We're in a huge transformation with our human consciousness. So the movement I'd like to share today has 3 parts. I was just checking in, because I thought it was one simple movement with that ancient bending over movement, but there's 3 parts. And the 3 parts are first connecting to the hip, the cradle of the pelvis. Second part is connecting to the feeling of the curve of the cranium or the skull, or any part of the skull. Some of us, it could be just that forward part of the skull. And then it's feeling that relationship between them. So in belly dance, we do this a lot by reaching our pelvis away from the skull. It's a movement where you're feeling that reach of the skull away from the pelvis. In the ancient indigenous dances, where the shaman would feel that curve of the head to the earth, they just simply felt that the pelvis was anchored to the earth through the feet. So this movement that I'm going to share with you is really about the nature of the power of 3 as well. When we have one sphere, which could be Earth, and a second sphere, which could be the sun, there's a relationship between the 2 spheres. And we have that beautifully represented through the sphere of the pelvis and the sphere of the cranium or the skull. So my hair's going to get really messed up with this movement, so just bear with me, because I've got to do a bit of contact. Messy hair day. It's not bad hair day, it's like crazy hair day. So I'm seated on the trampoline because for me, a pliable surface starts to make me have a lot of fun with my pelvis and sitting on it. And so if you have a soft surface or a cushion or a nice couch where you can sink your pelvis into, that can work for some of you. For some of us, having a soft surface with circles with the pelvis won't be as satisfying. And this is one simple way to start dropping into the feeling nature of our bodies. Everybody's body is unique. It's sacred. It's perfect. It's magical. And the more you tap into the feeling of what feels good for your body, this is where you can tap on your resource that's right now in your body, which we often bypass because we're too busy. Our society has certain conditioning about the body, and we follow other people's rule books about the body instead of feeling and dropping into what that feeling might be for you. And I just think of Tyrion Lannister's line, "When I drink, I know things. When I feel in my body, I know things." And now those things will be unique for everybody's body. So you can try this along with me or just follow along, watching and then try it later. But just to feel that sphere of your pelvis, I've got my legs crossed. For some of you, you might want to be with the feet on the ground. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And whatever you can do, just, you may have seen the other video where I shared that Sufi circle. So it's a great way to start noticing not just the circle itself, but the feeling of your body and the shape of the curve of your pelvis. And I like to slow this movement down and start to play with this idea that my pelvis is like that sphere of the planet Earth, that beautiful blue pearl, which is this music in the background from Jesse Gallagher. So when I slow the movement down, and this is the wisdom of the Sufis, when they used to do their rotations, what they were doing was matching the rotation of the earth itself. They were feeling and synchronizing through the movement and their breath that shape and beautiful sensation of our planet in the sky, rotating ever so majestically and slowly. So all life could be supported, and all life was constantly in a dance in the galaxy, in the solar system, with all other spheres. So you can just notice your pelvis wherever you're seated with that circle. Can you feel the surfaces of the pelvis touching the chair or the surface that you're in? And notice underneath the sit bones, any parts of your hips, buttocks, sacrum, any parts. You might not know what they're named. Just feeling into that part of you that's like a sphere, and you're connecting to that bottom of the sphere that's making contact with the surface that you're sitting on. And just try that other way, that other direction. The magic of belly dance is that we practice a lot of spherical moves, and every time I do a circle, whether it's a hip circle or a wrist circle, just notice how that feels in your brain. Because you might notice that there's when you change directions, your brain sort of goes, that's interesting. I don't know about that direction. And that's the whole magic of spheres in the body. It's always going to be unique to the joint or part of the body that you're rotating. And it does have a direct impact on the nervous system and the feeling system of your brain. So it automatically, when we do circles, they take us out of thinking into feeling, because they are actually just different in the way that we're connecting our neurons and our nervous system sensations. And they're generally very soothing and just nurturing in a sense of nurturance with our circles in a general way. So you might have felt some of the spherical shape of the pelvis in that circle. And for me, being on the trampoline, it activates quite a different feeling from being on the chair. So I like to do these circles in all sorts of places just to see how it feels and feel the difference. And you may also include some hand holding of your pelvis to give more structure. So you can put your hands on your hips or the sides of the pelvis and just feel that pelvis in the container of your hands moving around like a giant sphere. Try different rhythms or speed and feel what feels good for you. That alone is a very simple anchoring energy exercise to bring you back into being grounded. You talk about being grounded, let's do it. Let's move and be grounded. And so now you can, if you're following along, you can keep your eyes closed and just start to notice with that movement in the pelvis, how does your head move over the pelvis? So you can still bring some feeling and sensation awareness to where your hips or seat is touching the surface that you're sitting on, and just notice the head rotating over that circle. So it's like a gyroscope, or it's another counterpoint to the pelvis rotating, bringing that awareness to the head rotating over the pelvis. And so this time we're going to keep that movement going, but I suggest that you try just slowing it down and bring one hand to the side of your temple. So you're just going to feel that curve of your hand. Let's just slow it right down actually. I've got one hand on the side of my pelvis and I've got one hand resting, my head resting into that curve of the hand. So I'm feeling that head extend away from the pelvis, but I'm also feeling the curve of the head. So to feel the curve of the head, you may need to really feel that shape with both hands. And this time what we're going to do is a more forward and back movement. And just notice if you can feel that head as you're rocking forward and back over your pelvis, the curve of the forehead falling into the curve of your hand. And you can take your other hand to the back of the head and feel the back of the head falling into the hand. And slow this right down so you can get time to really feel that curve of the head. When we're in the classes, we actually do this with partner work. So you can really start to feel the curve of the head. In yoga, when you're doing the rabbit pose, you can really start to feel that curve of the head on the floor. So you can use the floor to really feel that curve of the head, but you have to be very gentle with the inversions, feeling that curve. And so for now, just bring one hand to the back of the skull and see if you can gently feel that curve in the back of the skull where it touches the neck, and just feel like the back of your skull is moving into the curve of your hand. So I use a curve in the hand like a cup, and I'm just allowing the back of the skull and the occiput region of the head to start to feel like it can be mapped into the curve of the hand, and feel that curve of the skull. And so the third part now is just feeling that curve in the back of the skull, which is often what we use in craniosacral work, and just feeling it reach away from your pelvis. You may want to just place a hand on the pelvis around the sacrum or not, but feel that curve of the back of the head, the base of the cranium, reaching and folding away from the pelvis. So slow this movement right down, and you can just start to feel how the curve of your spine can be mapped from the curve of the back of your cranium reaching away from the pelvis. And as you slow this movement down, you're feeling more into how that base of the cranium and the actually base of the brain is actually related to the pelvic basin or girdle or cradle. So that sacrum in the middle of the wings of your pelvis is connected through the spine to this bottom of the cranium. And you can just feel that gentle folding movement, arching of the spine, or curving of the spine, as a relationship between the brain and the pelvis folding together, the spheres of the skull and the pelvis coming together and moving apart. And then I'm just going to relax the hand and come back to that movement where now my head in a circle is rotating away from the pelvis. So this time the movement, the initiation of movements coming from my head, not the pelvis. And I'm feeling the head rotate over and around the pelvis. So this is like the sun rotating around the earth this time. And just notice the difference when you're feeling that the movement's initiated from the head, making a circle around the pelvis, versus what we were doing before. To me, this is a very different feeling and a different sense altogether. And I'm going to try doing the other direction. And feel that rotation of head around my hips. It's so beautifully connected, but they're also in a different point of view. When I come from the head rotating around my hips, there's a different feeling altogether. And so to finish, if you have your eyes closed, just find a way to bring that movement into stillness and allow yourself to be, you can continue gentle movement with your head relating to the hips. You can take it to different positions. So you're trying it in your cat-cow position. You can take it to some sort of choreography where you're just opening and closing the head to the pelvis. This is part of the work we do in Dance for Joy. It's like feeling how the head and pelvis are in relationship to each other always, and communicating different ways of feeling. And then if you like, you can gently open your eyes and just notice as you open the eyes any feeling that you might have, and be aware that whatever you're experiencing, it's a relationship between you and what your body is beginning to allow you to feel. And for me, it's an integration of how we come into our bodies and use that wisdom of the body through all of our ancient cultures and dance to give us the foundation of power to integrate our feelings in this very changing opportunity for humanity to become a species where we can say we have become a higher evolved species, where we accept each other and begin to integrate that opportunity to be a steward of life for every life, not just humans, and also be able to work with each other creatively so we can start to find solutions to the problems that we currently face. Thank you so much for joining. I look forward to hearing any comments if you had a go at the exercise. And join us, Dance for Joy, November 9 at the Authentic Living Centre, Darlinghurst, Sydney. November 9 is the last workshop. And then 2024, we'll be launching classes at Amira's Palace in Marrickville. Thank you so much and have a beautiful week.